Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. This is a special occasion right here. This is my first video episode. Everything else in the past has been audio. Nevertheless, we're going to be discussing adversity and overcoming setbacks. This is real special because in 138 episodes, there's always been something that has happened. Every single episode, whether it's been audio, electrical. I done spilled a mocha on my laptop, had to get a new iMac. Again, this is special. I'm glad y'all are here. I also want to give a shout out to Ken Folks Entertainment, who's sponsoring this show. So I have my co-host Leland Johnson on the show, and he's my alter ego. He's a very special guy. So we're gonna get into it, and we're talking about overcoming adversity. And one of the first things I want to say, this book here, this is the workbook, The Science of Sports Mastery. If you're listening to this right now, go to sportsmastery.com. I don't want you to buy anything. Download the free PDF, and you'll see the chapter in there on overcoming setbacks. So, Leland, I want to talk to you today about overcoming setbacks. This workbook, it was started with Brian Kelly. He was overcoming what appeared to be at the time a difficult coach. And as we both know, sometimes coaches aren't always difficult. Coaches aren't always assholes. Him going into his senior year, he was a 3.8, 3.9 GPA student. We already knew he was going to college. Yale had came to see him. Harvard had came to see him. And I wanted to put him in a situation to have fun. So within that propelled me into the science of sports mastery, reading a lot on sports psychology, sports motivation, social intelligence, emotional intelligence. So his experience brought forth the workbook in which I took the notes on napkins, on scratch pieces of paper, created a Word document, and gave it to a graphic designer who made everything cute. Now, we're going to get into the episode because I know you've been through some adversity. I've been through it. We've been through it as athletes and coaches. And some of the things that I found is that if you're not willing to go through hardship and learn from your hardship and be able to sit back and reflect, you're going to have a difficult go at things. So I want you to open this conversation up on overcoming adversity, Leland.
Well, whether you're talking from a personal experience or you're talking about...
It could be personal or working with athletes. I know Jazz has been through a lot. Tell me about Jazz. I know he had tore up his ankle when he was at the University of Portland, and later he transferred to the University of Nevada, Reno. So you had the ankle injury, him having some worries of tweaking his ankle, going to a new school, being the new guy. And tell us about him overcoming adversity and his success.
Actually, the story was this. It was after his freshman season, a very successful freshman high school season. He took us to the state championship. And coming back that summer, he was playing AAU basketball, and he broke his ankle. He was at Lincoln playing ball, and he broke his ankle as a freshman in high school. And I was talking this over with another athlete on what type of mental discipline it took at that age. And I told him the first thing I said to him when he got the injury, and you as a coach, trainer, father, parent, you're going through your own psychological trips, but I guess I was blessed, and it seemed like all of my thoughts went linear, and the first thing I said to him was, hey man, you do this all the time. We work out every day, right? We condition every day, right? We work on your shot. We get in the gym. We work on your skill set. That's repetition. So all we're going to have to do is get back in here and do that same, go back to the repetition stuff that we do what we was doing anyway. Now we direct it towards a place. And at a young age, I have to give him this credit. He was the one that made that decision and allowed himself to trust me, you know. So I think that's a big factor in this too. Whoever you're dealing with, the people you're around, do you trust the people that you're around?
Right.
You know. So that was a big part of the first start of him coming back off of or showing that he could get through some adverse situations.
Okay, you know what, I like that, and what I hear when you tell me that he made the decision, that tells me that he had a love for the game to have an injury, have a setback, and then be willing to keep going. So this is a recurring thing. So one of the first qualities that you need to overcome a setback as a young athlete and as a coach, you have to love what you do. You have to have a love for the game. So I can appreciate that. You had a chance to reflect, to go forward when you talked about the repetitions. This is what we did in the past. Right. And I often, and this is important. If you're listening, this is very important because you have 3 sights. You can close your eyes. You have hindsight, insight, and foresight. And Leland will tell you, he used the hindsight where he had to reflect on his current situation to get through it. So right now, this is insight. How can I go in the past, hindsight, and use that information to guide me with what's going on right now to make the best moves?
And let me say something. It's a twofold situation because you can use that hindsight, and that hindsight can be negative or it can be positive.
I'm talking about positive here.
There you go.
I'm talking about positive.
There you go. There you go. And it's important that we make that a point so they understand that, because sometimes you can go back in hindsight and different information is delivered differently, and different people analyze it differently.
That's right.
You can say something to me and I may take it a certain way, and you can say that same thing to someone else and they might be all into how you view it. You see what I'm saying?
Right. You know what? I got to take my glasses off for this because I want y'all to see me, to look in my eyes. And I've often said, and I've been saying it, you've heard me say this, the 2 most important things for a young person, that if you're a sports parent or coach, what you have to monitor is the things that they say to themselves when they're alone and how they see themselves when they're alone. And right now, I'm going to put them back on for y'all. Right now, I'm telling you, the 2 most important things going on with young people right now that you have to stay attuned to and monitor and be in tune with, they trust you, is what they say to themselves and how they see themselves. So this goes back to affirmations and visualizations. And you got him saying the right thing to himself. I know I can overcome this injury. Right. You know.
And
was there anything specific? Oh, go ahead.
And a lot of that was through personal experience too. And through personal experience is probably the main reason why I got into this field and started to fall in love with it and be so passionate about it. Because I went through a little change, and when I went through my change, I felt like if I could come through what I went through,
right,
then anybody else could go through, anything any less. You know
That's
what I'm
correct.
saying? So I started using that mind state with all my athletes, or that approach with all my athletes, And some of them, we would sit back and we talk about adverse situations in my life or in another person's life, and they would hear stories about how they overcame it, or how I overcame it. And it just began to be a moniker, a thing that it was a part of. When you walked into a room, that aura, you was going to feel it.
You know what's beautiful about this conversation is that, and I tell these athletes, if you listen to me and let me share my experience, you can learn from other people's experiences. So you don't have to metaphorically get your head busted by not listening or doing it the way you want to do it. And this goes to coaches too, and to sports parents. You have to be able to listen to others and learn from others so you don't make those same mistakes.
I think they say, and I could be wrong, on how this goes. Smart people, they go through the experience and they learn. Intelligent people, they sit back and watch other people go through it and they learn visually. So I'd rather be intelligent than smart. I could be wrong if it goes that way. If it doesn't go that way, somebody please call in and correct me. But there's that analogy is like someone telling me I worked out, and I go, well, did you work smart? Because you can work out.
That's correct.
And not get anything out of it. but you can work smart and get tenfolds out of it. So you got to take that intelligence into the weight room or wherever you got to go. Whatever part of your body that you're developing, you have to take that mental aspect in there. It even goes back to the real basics understanding of training. If you're for example working the pectoral muscles and you're doing bench press, what do? I put my mind on those muscle groups in order to get the full benefit out of that workout. I don't just walk into the gym and just start throwing weight up and looking around, and you might get something out of that, but you're going to get something out of it much more if you bring that intelligence into the
I like that, because that you want to be focused on what you're doing. And I often tell my kids, there's a time for talking during the workout, but are you talking about the workout,
right,
or are you talking about some thing that you might have saw on one of the social media networks?
Right.
That becomes a distraction. But if y'all are talking about the workout, or you might see some folly in the workout, I can live with that. But if you're talking about what happened at school or cracking jokes, that's the easiest way to get kicked out of my gym, or barred from the gym and make me go belligerent on you in front of your parents at the gym. Don't be that person. Like Leland said, if you're doing chest, let's focus on what we're doing. The bench press, the overhead press, incline, decline, whatever it is we're doing, focus on those muscle groups. And that's beautiful, because I've heard some other coaches say that before. This isn't about them, this isn't about us, so I'm not going to mention them. But we learn from other people.
Oh yeah, I mean, a friend of mine once said, when you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. And basically what he was saying is, once you get to the point where you think you know it all and no one can tell you anything, your end goal is to rot.
If you're listening to this right now, what Leland just said, you should be saying wonderful. On the count of 3, everybody say wonderful. 1, 2, 3, wonderful. Wonderful information, man. I really appreciate you. Again, this episode is brought to you by Kinfolks Entertainment. I want to take a time out to pay some bills. When you get a chance, check out Kinfolks Entertainment. You can find him on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the social media outlets.
Come on, man. That dude is, anything with entertainment, man, check out Kinfolks Entertainment, man. We got a lot of young artists that he's working with. Artists all over the city, artists all over the state, artists all over the country. Boy, busy.
You need a music video? Kinfolks Entertainment. You need a sports video done? Kinfolks Entertainment.
You need a commercial done?
Kinfolks Entertainment. Now, I want to get back to the subject at hand, because we're talking about overcoming adversity. And what I found is that some coaches, some sports parents, they're afraid to let their athletes go through adversity. And sometimes that's just having competition.
Yeah.
And it's like you start off, you're doing good, you're getting to certain levels where there's coming out of 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. Usually by sophomore, junior year, things start to get competitive. It's other guys that as fast as you, as big as you, they have the intelligence now. They're training with other people. So as a young athlete, if you're listening to this as a coach, a sports parent, you have to embrace competition, and you have to be willing to deal and get out of mediocrity when you're around a bunch of other good athletes. You might be a 3-star athlete and happen to find yourself training with a bunch of 4-star and 5-star athletes. That's not bad. You can work your way up. And what I found is with some people, they tied their identity to failure. When they could be tying their identity to success by working through the failures, learning to deal with competition and get better. Would you care to speak to it?
Well, the whole youth model is set up to make it so it makes it difficult for you to deal with failure. And let me explain to you from this standpoint. Okay, when you start competing as a youth athlete, okay, when you start competing, what do? They categorize you off in ages.
And size, most likely.
Size. They categorize you. Well, guess what? You do that for what? From the 3rd grade to the 8th grade?
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, they confuse you. Now you're in the ninth grade, and you're not competing with other ninth graders. You're competing with sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So now there's a whole mental adjustment just to adjust to the level of competition, the strength factor, speed factor. And right there in that scenario, you lose probably half your kids or half your youth kids, because psychologically you've been
coddled,
you've been pimped and fooled. You know, oh, I played on the third grade team and I had a lot of success, I killed it. And then next year I go to fourth grade and I'm playing against all fourth graders, oh, I killed it. Oh, I'm playing against fifth grade, oh, I killed it. Can't you see where a parent can go, oh wow, shit, my son is actually good at this.
Mm-hmm.
But your son is actually not, he's not really tested. If you really want to test him, if he's doing all this in succession, then the next move for you to, or the thing for you to do is look at that and go, okay, well, he's not being pushed enough. There's not enough competition out there for him.
Right.
So maybe what I need to do is take him a level up.
Or two.
You know, and whatever mechanism you have to use to make that happen, you make that happen. What I did is I became a coach in certain situations.
That's right.
Or I became involved in certain situations where I had to help other kids in order to help my own.
You know, what I've often found is that a kid could be genetically gifted coming up through elementary, middle school, so they don't really have to work because they're playing all off genetics, where they haven't done any formal training, any real strength training, any real sprint training, any real, you know, skills training, and then they hit that barrier where the kids before that were underneath them, they're starting to catch up and surpass them. And what I've often found is you can have dynamic athletes like that get to a certain level and quit because they've been coddled and they don't want to work hard.
And here's the other factor. Those kids that weren't so good, there are parents that understand that their kid has a shortcoming in a certain area. And guess what he'll do? He'll go out, find the information on how I fix that problem, and then get in touch with somebody like you or me.
Correct.
You got it?
Correct.
And even though that kid is an inferior athlete at that point in time, what that kid is gaining that the other kid doesn't have is discipline.
Discipline.
And an understanding of the human anatomy.
Mm-hmm. And that leads us back to our subject at hand, is overcoming adversity, because, you know, we've often talked about Logan Wilson. Mm-hmm. He was like pretty much the doormat of his youth football team. Right. But what I found when he started coming to training is they had the same schedule. He would never miss training sessions. Now I'm talking about 7th grade on. This kid is going into his senior year in high school, 7th grade. Little, if you're listening to this, Logan, Candy, if you're listening to this, his mom, he was a freaking pipsqueak all over the place, a spastic. But now this dude is about 6 foot, 230 pounds. He just overcame a knee injury himself. Yeah. Now he's doing things now as before that he couldn't do.
Right.
And that's off the confidence. And I went back to his visualizations and affirmations saying, my knee is getting better, my knee is coming back stronger. This stuff, I know some of this stuff might sound weird, but he's doing jumps, Leland, that these are advanced plyometrics that I know if his knee had any tweaks, he wouldn't be able to do them. Now, before I go further, we did progress him. He did go through all phases of physical therapy, and we progressed his jumps. I had to get him we went from jumping off of a box and landing and then jumping back up to a box. So we went through all the jump progressions, and then I just progressed them one step at a time. But you want to talk about overcoming adversity, that's a prime example right there. So, you know, so far, to overcome adversity, you got to love what you do. You got to love what you do, and you have to work hard. Mm-hmm. You know, talk to our audience, Leland, about working hard.
Well, let's
what does that mean to you?
Let's say working smart.
Working smart.
Let's not say working hard.
And I'm talking about being efficient, coming every day. When you have a scheduled workout, being at the workout, because when we talk about programming, if you miss certain days, that could set you back a week.
Yeah, it could.
You miss two days out of a week. Now you done set us back 3 weeks on top of where we're trying to go in our periodization model at the time. nevertheless, as we get into the fourth quarter of overcoming adversity, you know, you have to have goals. You have to have objectives. Being a young athlete, being a sports parent, being a coach. And I feel like when you have clarity with your goals and you have your objectives and you have intentions and you're taking action with intention based on your goals and objectives, things are going to happen better for you. So when you do encounter a setback or when you do encounter some adversity, it's going to be easier to come over that. So ultimately what I want to say is that your vision and purpose, it must be clear, because adversity will come, setbacks will come. But if your vision and purpose isn't clear, you're going to have a hard time. So if you come into the ninth grade, you're 6'1", 180-pound receiver, and your goal, or you're saying to me or your head coach that you want to play Division I football, first of all, you got to be on point with your grades. Now you got to live like a Division I athlete.
Yes, you do. And
that's going to minimize your social life for starters. So again, I just want to be clear about that. Leland, would you care to speak on, you know, having a vision and purpose? You know, tell us about your experience with jazz. I
was going to speak clearly from the standpoint of how important it is for the parent to have a plan,
right,
and their visualization to be in check. Matter of fact, they're probably the most important.
I agree.
Most important part of today's youth athletes. That whole machine is going on. Just like I told parents, I tell my college parents, or my parents that have kids that are going to college. A lot of parents feel like I'm going to send them to school and I'm going to let go and just let them learn on their own. You're making a huge mistake. You should be there as a parent to your child up until the point where if he's 22, 23, 24, if that's where you got to go with it, then you need to be that involved parent. Not involved to the point where you're being unfair to him and you're making judgment calls that favors him. But if you're honest and you're straightforward about his progress and you treat the things, the acclamations or the things that the successes, you treat those as commonplace. I'm not saying that you don't give him any kudos, but what you do is you treat it like this is supposed to happen. Okay, now you're doing good. Yeah, see, this is supposed to happen. I knew you was capable of this.
So what you're saying is don't get caught up in the accolades. Don't get caught up in the so-called scholarship offers, because you're only going to sign one.
Mm-hmm.
True. And then as a sports parent, what I'm hearing you saying, you should be objective on where your son or daughter's talent level is, and then at the same time have the vision. If you're going to be a parent, be a parent. If you're going to be a sports parent, be a sports parent. But don't undermine your son or daughter's coach, because now you are talking about things at the dinner table, and your son or daughter is going to take that energy to the field, and eventually it's going to come out. A coach can see that when that's going on.
I just had a player, she was in Southern California, she's playing AAU basketball. And she travels from here and she goes down, she travels down to San Diego to go play. So she's not there around the whole team and around the kids to get that extra, that camaraderie,
that chemistry.
And all that chemistry. So she comes in and she plays from out of town. And me and her, we talked, and she was like, well, 2 games I got to play, but there were 2 games I didn't get to play so much. I go, well, why? Well, yeah, I kind of wanted to talk to the coach about that. And the first thing I said to her is, no, you ain't. No, you're not. You're not going to go to him and question him on what he's doing. I said, but what you can do is call your mom and tell her to do it. I said, but she knows how to go about it. Well, just call your mom and tell her to approach the coach. And that's exactly what she did. And the situation got worked out. So Deshaun is right. You got to make sure you're not that over-involved parent. And you just got to make sure that you're using this as an experience for you and your child to grow together and to communicate, learn how to communicate with each other. I know that was my vision, because I didn't have that relationship with my father. Then because I was, I guess childish enough to where when I got my little, so when I got my little dog, that I was going, do what I had to do with it, and I chose to build a relationship, a real relationship with it. I was straightforward with probably more of my shortcomings than I was with my successes.
Right.
He learned more about my shortcomings as a young child, and then from my friends when I went home, he would go, "Hey, I didn't know you was this good in basketball." Well, I just share those stories with him right away, and it was a reason why I did that, because I didn't want him to think that everything was rosy and perfect. I wanted him to understand that sometimes you're not given the same chance as someone else, and you just got to make do with what you got.
What I like about what you're saying is I could express the same sentiments, because I'm like that. I shared my experiences when I was at Portland State partying. I shared my experiences when I was at Western Oregon partying, and later how I got it together playing some indoor football with you. But by then we were like 26, 27, 28 years old when I was peaking then. Well, really, you as a young athlete, you have to be peaking at 17, 16, 17, 18 years old, and not going through, some of the antics that I was demonstrating and going through. So Leland is right, because too often in the coaches community, and I'm talking about us global, we want to act perfect. We want to act like we didn't make any freaking mistakes. And most kids can see through that. They can see that you're being fake. So I agree 100% with what you said. Tell me what you've been through. Tell me what you've been through, and then I'll feel you. But I'm not going to feel you just telling me to do this, this, and this. I want to know, I want to hear about your subjective experience of what I'm going through right now. You working with a gang member on the streets. We were young once. Show them the picture of you partying.
Right.
You got dudes that can show you the gun.
Right.
When that guy was in the streets. Right. And then that'll make that young kid say, you know what, I don't think I want to do this.
Or he'll listen.
He'll listen. Exactly.
So you have to be willing to share your shortcomings and some of your adverse situations with your athletes. And then, like I told you, I share with him adverse situations that I didn't overcome. Mm-hmm. Well, this was my weakness.
Right.
Well, Dad, what did you do with it? Well, you know what? I never did do anything about it, which led to me, while I was working with him, to do something about it.
Got you.
You see what I'm saying? So when you green, you grow. You ripe, you rock.
Man, when you green, you grow. When you ripe, you rock. That's the theme of the day. Before we close out, what I really wanted to say is you've been a coach. You've coached at the high school level. You've coached at the youth level. You told the one girl's parent how to approach her travel team coach. But I know you've been in some situations where you have the overbearing parent. They want to tell you how to coach. They want to tell you when to play their son or daughter. Right. Talk to that parent right now.
Well,
or talk to other coaches how to deal with that type of a parent. Because I'm sure you've been undermined by parents.
Well, you as a coach, you have to have values, and you have to have certain things that you will deal with and certain things you won't deal with. And I often tell my kids, I was a parent, and when I started this, I was a parent before I was a coach. So I started this as a parent first, not as a coach. If you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
I started this as a parent, not as a coach. So I view certain things from a parental aspect. I don't view everything from a coaching aspect. And that can be a curse or it can be a blessing. It's a curse if you take it and you try to manipulate all the favors for your kid or for a group of kids.
Speak.
It's a curse. But it's a blessing if you know how to compartmentalize both from each other. Because you end up gaining a wealth of, you look pretty wise, when you start giving advice and you start making suggestions to kids. I could think of a situation when Jazz was at Portland State And
University of
Portland. I'm sorry. Shout out to Rev. Love you, bruh. Good dude. Always will love you. Rev was pretty hard on him. And I think Rev was hard on him for the right reasons, Rev, because I think he thought that me and Jazz's relationship was one of, I was coddling him. He didn't really took the time to really sit back and watch us, really on
see the dynamics of y'all's relationship.
So what he did is he took it upon himself to challenge it. But Jazz was already challenging those areas. I remember a situation where Jazz was in practice and he was testing the star player. The young rook coming in testing the star player who was all conference in the league. Had a great season, great player, Alex Wintery. What's up, Al? And I think he was like, hey man, kind of back up off of him. Don't go so hard. And he asked Jazz a question, and Jazz answered the question, and then he looked at Jazz in a way where and Jazz looked at him and winked. He then took that as a line of disrespect. Jazz said he kicked the chairs and went crazy, and kicked everybody out of practice. Jazz came back out of practice. Well, came back, he called Jazz into the office. He said, what did I tell you, Jazz? I told you. Okay, get your ass back to practice. So then Jazz comes to me and goes, Dad, he coming down hard on me. He's taking it personal on me. I said, Dad, Jazz, I said, hold on. Let me explain something to you. You in your feelings right now. I said, when you look around that place, is that facility they just built, is it there? Yeah. All that equipment, the shooting machines and all that kind of stuff, is that there? Yeah. The practice dummies.
What's a practice dummy?
We call the players practice dummies.
Yeah.
Okay. Are the practice dummies still there? Yeah. Well, why don't you utilize it for yourself and quit tripping off of what he's tripping off of? As soon as you program yourself to take control of the things that you have control of, he'll notice that and he'll leave you alone. That's exactly what happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close out. I really appreciate y'all tuning in. This is a real blessing. I want to give a further shout out to Ken Folks Entertainment. And what Leland was saying was, if you just take your environment and use your environment, the people around you, if there's 7 receivers, use them other 7 receivers to get better. If you have 4 quarterbacks on the team and you're used to being the man, compete with them 4 quarterbacks. Figure out what your strengths are. Maybe your strength is you're getting into your feelings. You're emotional. You got to learn how to control your emotions, because you can control that. You can't control when you're going to go in, but when you do go in, can you execute?
Can you execute?
Sports parents, if you're looking for a program to help develop your student athlete, check out my course, The Edge, showing and helping the student athlete how to take effective action, developing discipline, showing them how to develop a growth mindset and expand their mind in the form of reflective thinking. This is the place you want to be. This is course. I want you to work through this course with your student athlete. It's not for them to go at it alone. This is a gap. This is a way to bridge the gap between the student athlete and sports parent and the student athlete and the coach. Check out my course, The Edge, at sportsmastery.thinkific.com. I'll also have a link in the show notes.